it is very difficult to understand the true cause of anything. So, when we talk of things like war, we must take into account what and all sources are there which inform us about it. Now, one is the media, the traditional media, and the social media. The problem with these is that they have become highly polarized. And nowadays, it is not about informing the people, but it is more about making them stay on a particular channel and watch more and more of it, because that gets the advertisers and stuff like that. And even in social media, the platforms are designed in a way so as to keep the users on the platform. So, it is very difficult to get a true picture of what is happening, because media and social media is all about sensationalism. Then the second source is where we try to understand the history of a conflict, historically, what has happened. Now, here again, it is very difficult because the people who write history themselves have, they either have biases, or it is a fact that the capacity of a human mind is still limited. Even if the person may have spent their entire life in one particular field, whether it's history or science or any such thing, still their perspective about a particular situation is conditioned. Now, I'm not discrediting historians or people who have done research work, because that is the best we have available for us to make an analysis, you know. But at the same time, it is not going to free us from the question of violence and war. Where does it come from? And my perspective on this subject, which again is a limited perspective, but if you consider this, is that everything that is born out of thought is divisive. So, all the tradition, religion, the organized culture, they are all born of thought. And what we see on the outside is a manifestation of what is happening in a minute scale within us. So it is not that the violence that is happening outside is completely separate from me. What Jagjot Krishnamurti says is that you are the rest of the humanity. So to think that I am separate from the rest is identification with the limited, is identification with the illusion of me. And that is the beginning of it. That is where all the conflict stems from. And conflict breeds pain and suffering. Because when I am limited, when I believe myself to be limited, to be small, I do everything in my power to protect myself, to enhance myself. Basically, I am living in survival mode. And that survival mode compels me to sometimes act in a way which is not in harmony with existence. Or let's put it this way, which is undesirable, which is again giving rise to more and more conflict. So rather than my conflict being finished, my conflict is increasing day by day. So I'm more restless. And war and violence is not something new. This has been going on since time immemorial. History tells us that we have seen so many wars, we have seen so much conflict. Humans have always fought for borders in the name of religion, in the name of organization. Any limited identification breeds conflict. So, is the thought an answer to all of this? That is the main question. When we say we don't want violence, why do we have wars? What is the solution to this problem? Any solution that comes out of thought is limited. Now, this is where I introduce a new concept which says that the reason for our conflict is that we are not able to fully feel our suffering, our pain. So, what we see on the outside is actually what is happening inside. It is just a different form, but it's essentially the same. So, I say that, as they say that in war, innocent people die. The only innocent people that die in war are children. The grown ups, people like us, we are not innocent. We are not good people. For the simple reason is that we have not taken the time to look at ourselves, to look at what's happening within us. Self reflection, self work related to understanding the self knowledge, is a very challenging work. It is the most uncomfortable work, and hence people avoid it, ignore it, because it requires total absorption into what is happening in the moment. So, if I feel pain, I experience pain, which could be a result of a childhood trauma, which could be a result of the fact that my caretakers did not give me the attention, the validation, the authenticity that I needed at that time. So I was raised in an atmosphere of fear, and now that fear rules me. I'm in grips of that fear. All my actions come out of that fear. So there is no question of harmony with the other if I myself, I am full of fear. To look at that fear center, which is an illusion, to look at it totally, with total attention, with complete attention, is a challenging job. It's a difficult job. Total seeing happens in complete effortlessness. And ridden by fear, we resort to effort all the time. So we cannot see the situation the way it is. We always superimpose our concepts on a particular situation. So when we see on the television that one particular group is attacking, is assaulting another group, we are quick to create judgments on that. That this is the evil, this is the good, and this should be the course of action. The evil should be suppressed, and this and that. And a majority of our protests, even the peaceful protests, they turn violence. So what essentially we are doing is that we are breeding that whole idea of violence while we talk about peace. This is a part of our hypocrisy. Because our children, the innocent, the true innocent beings, they are watching all this. They say that our parents talk about God, godliness, love, compassion, peace, but their actions are completely opposite. One group protests and the other group also protests, and they both clash, and there is violence. And this is the nature of ego. The ego is complete unconsciousness. It keeps on doing what has never worked for centuries, for generations. The ego is unwilling to look at its own actions, to look at its own unconsciousness. It is always externalized. It is always there to blame, condemn others, because the ego lives with that notion that there is me, the limited me, and there are the others. So when certain sensations arise, fearful sensation arise, the ego wants to protect itself, so it fights. It is always in the survival mode. Living in the survival mode is living an animalistic life, is living in that zone, in that mentality where violence seems to be the right answer. Jittu Krishnamurti said this very clear. He said, "Do you think you love your children? Ask yourself, investigate it. If you really loved your children, there would be no war." These were his words. Very direct. We claim to be very loving, very peaceful, but internally we are conflicted. Because I feel that I am separate from the rest of the humanity. Therefore, my whole movement is to secure myself as the individual. And I have no concern what happens to the rest. My thinking, my religion, my ideas, my theories, my views, only these shall prevail. Rest, everybody is wrong. This is how the ego mind works. Now, I'm not offering a solution to the problem of war because I don't have any solution to the problem of war. But I'm pointing you back to the source, to the root of this conflict. Once this conflict is understood, it becomes clear as to why we continuously face this issue of wars and violence, of inhumanity, indifference. Why do we commit atrocities? Why do we behave like animals? Why cannot we use our intellect? Why cannot we use the work of other philosophers, the work of great historians who have pointed out time and again the futility of violent behavior? But still we go back. Still we act in the most unconscious way. That means we are still indivisible. That means we are divided. I'm sorry, not indivisible. That means we are divided. To be an individual means to be indivisible. I was reading a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, the late Vietnamese monk, and he tells a story of a French army official. I don't know if it was French, but I think so it was, who was in the Vietnam War, and some of his colleagues were killed by the guerrilla fighters, and he wanted revenge. He wanted to take revenge, he wanted to get back. So what he did was he prepared sandwiches and poisoned them. He put some explosive material, something like that, in the sandwiches, and he placed them near the steps of the temple. He was expecting that people who would come there would pick up the sandwiches, eat them, and die, and then he would get the satisfaction. And then he would get the revenge that he was looking for. But what happened was a couple of children came and they ate the sandwiches, and 5 of those children died. Horrible death. They died in the presence of their parents. Now this man went back home, and for many decades he lived with that pain because he did not intend to kill the innocent children. But now the act had been committed, and he was constantly in guilt and shame. So he approached a monk, where the monk told him that the reason why you are in pain is because those children are present in each and every cell of you. That consciousness is there, is right here, right now, within you. What has happened cannot be undone, but what is to happen in the future can be looked at. And from that day, he decided to help every 5 children, to provide them with meal, the places where children are malnutritioned. And every single day he would feed 5 children. And that is the way he got out of this pain, this conflict. So, unless and until we take a look at ourselves, unless and until the attention turns inwards, there is no possibility of any peace in this world. Despite so many teachings, we still have wars going on, which is very unfortunate.